When you speak to the general public now, when you do podcasts like this, what is the essence of the message that you're aiming to communicate to them?
Bitcoin is digital empowerment, digital capital. We're living through the digital transformation of assets, and this is just as profound transformation as digital intelligence. The real profound breakthrough of Bitcoin is this idea that you can take economic energy, convert it to digital form, and tightly bind it to the person, the family, the company, but the country. We can talk about how we all hate countries, but the history of the world is all the weak countries getting smashed by all the big countries. So if what you're interested in is empowerment and fairness and equity for the small company, the small family, the small person, the small country, the weak, how do you do it? Well, you basically encrypt the money, put it in cyberspace, protect it with a private key. It's like now you can actually own something and someone more powerful than you can't take it away from you.
There's two types of money there in front of you. There's dollar bills, and then I've got a couple of Bitcoin on the table. What do you mean they can't take Bitcoin from you?
Okay, so this is a stack of currency. You walk through an airport on this, they ask you if you have cash. If you do, they just take it. Cash in a physical form is a problem. So what do? You put it in a bank. Well, the bank is a counterparty. So the bank then decides whether you get to keep it and whether you get it back. You go to the bank and you ask for it back. They might ask you why you asked for it back. If you ask for that much back, they file a form with the Treasury Department. If you ask for too much money back too soon, right, someone comes knocking on your door. So the challenge with this is fiat currency. And you hold this at the pleasure of the nation state. And by the way, not just your nation state. It's like every country on earth gets to decide whether you get to spend this stuff, right? Which is interesting. And if you want to actually transfer money to someone in another country, you need the permission of your bank, another bank, the central bank of their country, the correspondent bank. There might be 7 different banks that have to decide whether the money gets from here to there. So this is permissioned money, that's managed by the state. And with Bitcoin, I can take $1 million. I can actually encrypt it in a chip in a physical coin, the Cascacious coin. And that's $1 million. I slide it across, and it's literally a bearer asset, and so that's one manifestation of it. But you could also put it into information form. I could transfer this to you just in the form of a private key that I wrote on a piece of paper.
So
and I gave to you.
A series of letters you could give me.
Yeah, or I could send you a message. I could send a text message. So good luck getting $1 million of gold from here to London if people don't want you to move it. But I could move $1 million of Bitcoin from here to anywhere in a few seconds. The idea was, I don't want to trust Apple or Google or Morgan Bank or a central bank or a government, right? And so in the extreme case, 2 people can meet in Africa and I can trade you some Bitcoin for your truck. And I don't need the permission of 7 banks and 16 governments and 32 other bureaucrats in order to buy that truck.
What is it that most people, the average person, doesn't understand about the nature of money as it's sat in their bank, as it relates to the debasement of it or the sort of inflation of it? Because most people think if they've got, $10,000 in their bank and they keep it there and maybe getting interest on it at 4% a year, they're going to be good.
So this is about $10,000, I guess. 1 acre of land in Miami Beach on the water cost $10,000 about 100 years ago. I know this because I have a house on the water and I have the deed of sale, and it was about on 2 acres and it was $20,000. The entire house cost $100,000, and it's about $20,000 worth of land. Today, 1 acre of land on the same acre on the water, $10 million, maybe $20 million. So, what happened here, right? It's the same dollar. It works out to be 1,000x. increase in price. So when land goes from $10,000 to $10 million, that means that the currency, the dollar, the money, lost about 7% of its economic value every year for 100 years running. If you lose 7% a year, then you get cut in half, right? 10 times, right? So what do most people not know about money? What they don't realize is that the best currency, money being a medium exchange unit account store of value, the dollar, the best in the 20th century and the 21st century, the US dollar lost 7% of its value every year going for 100 years. That's the best it's ever going to get. It's not that good for everybody else. If you go to most other countries, they lose 14% of their value, and so they collapse in about 30 years. So what you have is a situation where if you store your wealth in currency and the money of the society, the question really is just, are you going to lose most of your money within 10 years? That's the weak currencies. In Africa, for example, most currencies in Africa, you couldn't hold your wealth even for 10 years, maybe 5 years. Or are you going to lose all your money in 30 years? Hyperinflation happened in Brazil, happened in Argentina. That's Mexico. That's most places. And that's the status quo. The average fiat currency, collapses in about 29 years, I think. And then the best is if you happen to be a citizen of the greatest nation in the world and you win all the wars, you're just going to lose all your money. And, half-life is 35 years. You're going to lose your money over the course of 100 years.
So should I buy a house?
So you get to the next interesting point, which is that $100,000 in 1926 in Miami Beach today would be worth $100,000. That house, $50 to $100 million. So the house is better, right? In fact, if you're trying to preserve your wealth, you have to acquire scarce, desirable property. So your choice is, do I buy real estate? Do I residential real estate? Do I buy commercial real estate? Do I buy a private company? Do I buy a public company like stocks? Do I buy collectibles? So let me tell you why you shouldn't buy a house. Because there's a 2% property tax on houses in Florida, which means that if you buy a house, you pay 2% of the value every year. 2%, means that every 36 years, you actually pay the cost of the house in tax to the government. Not a very good store of value because you're taking on a massive tax load and you're taking on a maintenance load. But having said it, it's still a better deal than just holding cash in a bank or holding cash in a safe. Commercial real estate looks a bit better, right? Because with commercial real estate, you can offset the tax, the insurance, and the maintenance cost with rents. So what really works out with commercial real estate most of the time is you buy $1 million commercial real estate, you have a bunch of fees, you charge rent. The rent offsets the maintenance cost. You don't really make any money on the rent, but the underlying $1 million appreciates 7% a year every year. And so you actually can build wealth with commercial real estate if you can just cover the maintenance expenses.
Most people are told that the way to build wealth when they leave university and they get into the working world is to buy a house. So most people, that's what most people do. They get a job, a 9 to 5, they take the money they get from that, they go and get a mortgage, they buy a house and they move in. That's kind of what we're all told implicitly. Is that a good strategy to build and become wealthy in your view?
The only way that it's a good strategy is you're buying the house in a jurisdiction where the property taxes are manageable. Then yeah, you can generate some wealth. But if I flip that and you end up taking a 7% mortgage and you get massive tax and massive insurance expenses, then that same investment, works out the other way and it crushes you to death. So a better idea generally is commercial real estate. If you actually have the business acumen to get into commercial real estate business, because you can pass all the expenses through to your tenants. These things are all hard, right? Real estate business is hard. Starting your own company is hard. Investing in other companies is hard. The conventional thing, the safe thing, is I just put all my money in a money market and I get paid 3%. And then after tax, I've got 1.5%. And the currency is losing 7% of its value a year. And you're just losing 5 or 6% of your wealth every year for your life. So that's why Bitcoin is such a compelling thing. That's why people that believe in Bitcoin are passionate about it, because the average person shouldn't have to be a real estate expert. They shouldn't have to be a tax expert. They shouldn't have to be capable of launching their own restaurant or bar or bakery. You shouldn't have to be a stock picker. Why shouldn't the typical person just be able to take their money, put it into an asset which appreciates in value 15% a year, and they don't have to worry about it?
What about the S&P 500? They could just put it into the stock market, right?
Yeah, John Bogle's real contribution and the success of the S&P 500 is this idea that currency is not a store of value. Real estate is illiquid and scary and difficult and inefficient and high maintenance. So what is the liquid capital asset that I can buy? And it turns out to be like SPY. It's just the S&P 500 in the form of an ETF. So that has returned 15% over the past 6 years. Over 100 years, maybe 10%, something like that.
Every year.
And if the US dollar is losing 7% of its value in scarce desirable terms over the course of 100 years, and you're getting 10%, you're getting a 2 or 3% boost in return for accepting the volatility of being invested in the stock market. But it's not a bad idea, right? If you want the conventional best idea to preserve your wealth without taking on individual, corporate risk and individual real estate risk, I just buy the S&P index and wait.
What about this? This is gold.
Yep.
Why not just put all of my money into gold?
It's not an awful idea to buy gold. Gold is up 12% a year for the past 6 years. So whereas the S&P is up 15, gold's up 12, the Nasdaq's up 18, Bitcoin is up 33. Okay, so generally, if you look at the world and you say, where do you want to save your money? You want to buy a capital asset. Gold's a winner, S&P's a winner, diversified tech stocks are a winner, Bitcoin is a winner. Now you're going to say to me, why Bitcoin? Well, the answer is, if you're living in Turkey, if you're living in Argentina, if you're living in Brazil before the currency collapses, or Mexico or Venezuela or any country in Africa, you don't get gold, you don't get the S&P, you don't get QQQ. You can't buy diversified real estate in the U.S. Those options I named are Western world conventional capital assets. So the big mistake, don't invest in non-capital assets. Don't put all your family's money in soybeans. Don't buy barrels of crude oil. Don't buy cotton. Don't invest in things that a factory or a robot or an AI can generate infinite of. You buy things that the robots and the AIs and the big factories cannot pump out by the million gallons. And so what is that? It is maybe an ounce of gold. It is a share in the 500 most desirable companies in the world. It is 1 out of 21 million Bitcoin. All of those things are things that the robots are not going to create infinite of. Those are capital assets. Which capital asset is a function of where you live and what your mindset is. If you're living in a war zone, my advice is Bitcoin, because you're not carrying this through a checkpoint, right? Like, if you need to go through an airport, you want something that you get to keep and take with you.
You talked about the robots there.
Yeah.
And when we say the robots, I think we mean both the surge in robotics we're seeing, but also artificial intelligence that's going to empower them to be very, very intelligent.
Yeah.
How has this changed your thesis and how you view the future? Because it's a profound surprise, I think, to all of us that artificial intelligence is accelerating at the rate we're seeing.
Technology fails until it succeeds. When I was at MIT, people were trying to make, speech recognition work. It just didn't work. For 1,000 years, people wanted to fly, and it didn't work. And in 1902, the New York Times declared that every learned scientist knows that you'll never be able to fly. And then in 1903, we fly. In 2023, the AI started working. You can see what's happening. We have affected the digital transformation of intelligence. Cars are going to drive themselves. It's pretty clear that anything that takes massive human labor, whether it's lawyering, writing a contract, or composing a poem, or composing a script, or composing a book, it's like, you want a book? Tell the AI what kind of book you want. Here's my 10, I want this. I want it to be set in London. I want these protagonists. Can you make it like that? Put some more violence in it. Voltaire, right, was impressive because he created, this much literature. And when he did it, it came out of the mind of one man, and that was quite amazing. And, I think we're always going to admire the people that did it first, right? But, the AIs will think for us. Put the AI into the robot. We're not that far, right? Like when I sit and I talk to my voice assistant, whether it's Chat or whether it's Grok, and it's like she knows everything, and she keeps getting smarter. Every single week she gets smarter, and it's like, what happens when they go into a robot? It's like, well, you pretty much can imagine a billion robots, and maybe we'll pay $200 a month for a robot, and the robot will just pretty much do everything. And so the question is, do you want someone to do everything, to cook, to clean, to take out the trash? Would you like a self-driving car? Of course you do. We're on the verge of these perfect products, right? That, like, we'll get to the point where we're like, you used to actually have an oven that burned things? Like what? It was stupid? Yeah, it was too stupid to know it was going to burn the... Huh? Why didn't you just put intelligence into the appliance, right? Why would you ever have an unintelligent appliance, right? At this point, when it gets exponentially cheaper. We used to get in traffic accidents, right? Like the big reveal, right? The big inversion is when people realize that the self-driving cars are safer than the person-driven cars, right? It's like, you used to make mistakes. The irony, of course, is now when you send a message to someone, if you want to prove that it came from you, you have to actually put errors in it, right? It's like, if you put errors in it, I believe you typed it. The AI can draft the thing as though it had a PhD in English and it had 20 years experience as a copy editor. And so we're reaching this point where lack of effectiveness is just laziness, right? Like, if you wrote something which wasn't perfect, it's because you're lazy, not because you're not perfect. I mean, the AIs create perfect documents. They do perfect research. The robots will do any amount of work. And I think Elon makes this point, which is we're about to trip over an age of abundance.
Do you believe that's true? What does that say about Bitcoin? Because I'm looking at some of the quotes here that Elon said about the age of abundance. And he says, in the future, where anyone can have anything, you no longer need money as a database for labor allocation. If AI and robotics are big enough to satisfy all human needs, then the relevance of money declines rapidly. I'm not sure we will have it. If you are stranded on a desert island with $1 trillion, it will be pointless because there is no labor to allocate. In a benign scenario, we will have universal high income, not just universal basic income, meaning anyone can have any products or any services that they want. Universal high income via checks issued by federal governments is the best way to deal with unemployment caused by AI/robotics. Because AI and robotics will produce goods and services far in excess of the increase in money supply, so there will be no inflation. Work will become optional. Kind of like playing sports or a video game. You can go to the store and buy vegetables, or you can go and grow them in your backyard because you like growing them. That's what work will be like. AI and robotics are going to make so much stuff and provide so many services that they will actually run out of things to do for the humans. Money is fundamentally information. The true constraints of the future won't be financial. They'll be energy and mass.
He's half right. I agree with part of what he says. That is, consumer goods, consumables, utilitarian goods will become abundant. But there are always going to be scarce, desirable goods that will not become abundant. And I think he overstates the case. Money will still be valuable. Wealth will still be valuable. But I'll give you an example. Henry VIII didn't have clean water, did not have heat, did not have cooling. These things the King of England did not have. And technology gave all these things to the middle class. And so if you live in the middle class today, you can have your appendix out. But Henry VIII didn't have dental crowns. He didn't have x-rays. So you get modern medical care. The infant mortality rate has plunged. Life is safer. Clean water, clean air, right? Clean food. And technology gave them to us. We stamp out infinite Coca-Cola, infinite Hershey's bars, ice cream, right? Running water. Right? Electricity. So all of those things have been given to the middle class, the working class, in the developed world. Right? Not everywhere, but let's say in the developed world. But everybody doesn't get a Hamptons house. Everybody doesn't get their own private jet. They don't get their own private yacht. So what happened with the explosion of affluence? Massive utilitarian entitlement, lots of cars. But okay, so everybody gets a car, but how many people get a Porsche? What happens with humanity is we always invent the luxury car. We come up with the trophy asset. And again...
But most people don't actually want that. They want to be able to feed their family and not have to worry about the bills. So all of those people, are you saying that those people they're going to be good? They're not going to have to worry.
I'm saying that if your aspiration is a good life, if you want infinite food, infinite energy, infinite education, infinite entertainment, right? You're probably going to get it. My point is, in theory, right, why does money matter today? Because everybody, has electricity and water. Because people want to buy something more than water. By the way, water is the proletarian drink.
What does that mean?
It means that if you go to a restaurant and you can't afford anything else, you ask for a cup of water, right? And then if you have some more money, you get yourself a Coca-Cola or a soft drink, and that costs $5. But if you have more money, you buy yourself a vodka. And then when you have more money, you want to buy yourself the specialty high-end tequila, and eventually people find a way to spend $38 on a drink. And, in New York City, you can see that everywhere. Why do we go to restaurants and pay $300 to eat at a restaurant? Because you can actually feed yourself on $3 a day. And the answer is there's always going to be a hierarchy of affluence, and people are going to find things to aspire to that will be more than the utilitarian mean that everybody gets. If I give you a universal health care, people want private health care. If I give everybody a house, someone's going to want a house twice as big. Everybody's always going to have a reason to want something more.
Because we're status-orientated animals.
That's the cynical way to look at it. But the other way to look at it is, I wanted to be sitting on a mountain peak skiing, but not that mountain peak, because the snow's not good on that mountain peak this week.
And it's too busy on this one.
Yeah, and that one's too crowded. It's like there's always going to be some exclusivity. There's going to be a quest. So I think that money's not going away. I think it's pretty obvious if you look around you that people still need money. It is true that the basic needs in life, basic transportation, basic energy, basic health care, all of those things can be manufactured in quantity and they'll get progressively cheaper. We'll call them consumer goods.
If you love the Diary of a CEO brand and you watch this channel, please do me a huge favor. Become part of the 15% of the viewers on this channel that have hit the subscribe button. It helps us tremendously, and the bigger the channel gets, the bigger the guests.